Good evening, everybody. My name's Anne Halloran, and you're very welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm delighted to introduce Jackie Barrie. Good evening, Jackie.
Hello.
Hi, you're
Hi,
very
Anne.
welcome. Okay, before we get into the webinar, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the whole area of writing web copy?
That's a great question. I knew I wanted to be a writer from the age of 13, and careers advice that I had at my school wasn't very good. And when I spoke to them and said, well, I want to be a writer, they said, you don't want to do that. Writers starve in a garret. What you want to do is be a teacher. And I thought, no, I don't. But I went off, and the only type of writing I've heard of at that time that made any money was journalism. So I got myself trained as a journalist. And although I never worked as one, I ended up working as a copywriter. And I've been doing that for the past 30 years. But I also, as well as hands-on writing websites, I've written hundreds of them now, I also train people how to write their own. So perhaps I've ended up a teacher after all.
Okay, great. I must say, I do love your logo. It's a lovely design, you know, Jackie Barrie logo there. And I suppose you'll be talking later a bit about branding and how important that is with websites.
Branding is important, and it's not a core part of what I've prepared for today's session because it's more about the words than the visuals. But I think so long as it's consistent and professional across everything you do online, then that's where branding comes in.
Okay, great. Well, I'll hand over to you now at this stage then, Jackie, if you'd like to talk us through what you're going to cover tonight.
Okay, well, the next slide gives an overview of the content of this webinar, and what it will do is answer for the people listening in whether they're making any mistakes on their website. So the next slide shows we're going to do 4 objectives for your homepage, what 4 words to avoid and why, and the 4 elements you need to have on your website. And I've put this together with examples from different people from a similar industry. So most of the examples, they're all used with permission by the way, are from speakers and trainers. So you can see how different people do different things to achieve the same result. So these are the results that you want to achieve on your own website, and you want to do it in your own way. So by the end of the webinar, you're going to have your own ideas for how you can do these things. So we'll start with the 4 objectives for your homepage. Objective number 1. Let people know they've landed in the right place. So you've got them to land on your homepage in the first place. That's good. They might have landed there because of your search engine optimization efforts, or they might have landed there because of your offline marketing. But you've only got 3 seconds to make an impact. So at a glance, they need to see, yes, this is the website for me. So if that's what you want them to know, how do you do that? The next slide shows your homepage shouldn't talk about you. Your homepage should talk about them, your customer, your target audience. Your About page is where you write about you, and not everybody will even want to read your About page, but depending on what you sell, many people will want to read it because they want to know who they're dealing with. So that's the place for you to write about you. On your home page, you want them to know they've landed in the right place, so you want to write about them. And how do you do that? On the next slide shows you answer what's in it for me from the point of view of your target audience. So, for an example, Nigel Risner on his website uses the word you and your much more than he uses the words I, us and we. The words you and your and what percentage of the content they are compared with the words I, us and we. So that's the secret of making your homepage answer what's in it for me. But that's only one of the objectives for your homepage. They might have landed there and they might see what's in it for me, but they might not be at that very moment ready to buy. So your second objective for your homepage is to capture their email address so that you can keep in touch. So there are different ways of doing that. Alan Stevens, the media coach, with another click you'll see spinning into view how he captures email addresses, and it's a weekly reputation tips newsletter. Notice that he doesn't use the word newsletter because all of us have too many newsletters to read. Our inboxes are really full and we're all really busy people, and our customers are exactly the same. So nobody signs up for newsletters anymore. In fact, people unsubscribe, I know I do, more even from things that you actually want to read because none of us have the time to read them. So in return for someone giving you their email address, you have to give them something they actually want. So you might call it a tip sheet or offers and deals, or give it a name or a description which is something that your audience will find of value. So newsletters are still a good thing to have, and the reason for that is that 68% of people leave a company because of perceived indifference. So if you're sending a newsletter, even if it's called a tip sheet, every month at a minimum, or a quarter if you have to, but ideally at least once a month, then it reminds them you exist, it reminds them that you're thinking of them, it reminds them that you're still trading, and even if they don't open it, it puts you at the front of their mind every month or whenever when they see that email ping into their inbox. So you want to capture email addresses. That's how Alan does it. By way of contrast, Simon Chaplin on his website captures email addresses in not such a quiet way, in keeping with his brand and design of his website. On the next image you'll see how he incentivizes people to give him their contact details.
And can I just ask, before we get into that, Jackie, how do you incentivize people on your website? Any tips on that?
Well, I give them a very simple newsletter sign up, and here are some of the rules to do. If you give them boxes to fill in rather than a text link which they then click, which then opens an email, they're more likely to fill it in. Second tip, the less information you ask for, the more likely they'll give it to you. So on mine, all I ask for is first name and email address. But if some companies I've probably seen, or you've probably seen, ask for first name, last name, birthday, all sorts of information, inside leg measurement, people are less likely to fill it in. So if you only ask for first name and email address, if you ask for it in a box format. And the third tip is to incentivize responses, because that email address is very valuable to you and it's very precious to the people who may or may not share it with you. So it's to incentivize it by saying, give me your email address, and not only will you get my monthly tips about whatever it is, but also a free something. So on mine they get an exclusive downloadable report with 10 tips about copywriting. And on this example we're looking at now, Simon Chaplin, I think there's a close-up view of his sign-up on the slide if you click it again. So if I'm just going to my website so I can tell you the actual title of my incentive, it's called DIY Marketing Challenge, Does Your Copywriting Pass These 10 Tests?
Okay, and I think I tried the same thing with mine as well at one point, and I had a work-life balance checklist. It was on my Practical Management Skills website, and it was just a small little document, but it really did help get subscriptions. And here you go now, this is the example you wanted to show us.
Yes, so here's Simon's one. So he's asking for first name, last name, email and telephone, but telephone is optional. And he's reassuring people that he's not going to spam them or sell their details. And his button that they click says, yes, I want to stop my business being broke. So a button that says something more interesting than submit or subscribe is another tip. In his case, he's showing all this massive personality, but it needs to be something consistent with your own brand identity. So mine just says, yes, please. But all those 4 little things are ways of getting more sign-ups. And so that's your second thing your homepage ought to do. If they're not ready to buy that instant, you really want their email address. And the third thing you want your website to do is tell them where to go next. Now, I'm not talking about simple navigation on your website. That's just a basic. What you actually need is strong visual calls to action. The next slide says that in a strong visual sort of a way. And then I've got 3 examples. A call to action tells people what to do next. So what Kieran Harty does on his homepage is to have learn more. Clickable buttons, they're all yellow and they stand out quite well to say he wants people to look at the about page, his services, his courses or his resources. So it's very clear if you land on his homepage, you choose where you're going to go. What Wendy Kerr did, she analysed very carefully, I talked to her about this, who her different audiences were, and she discovered that they were either employees or they were entrepreneurs. And she did further analysis to say what was the biggest question that employees and entrepreneurs were asking that she could help them with, and then she had these graphics made up for them. So the first one was for employees, are you ready to start your business? Take our free assessment. And for entrepreneurs, are you making the money you deserve? Learn how to change it. So the employees can click for the free consultation and the entrepreneurs can click for the free ebook. So when you look at her homepage, you know, if you're an employee or entrepreneur, you know which button to click. So it's all from the point of view of her audience, and that's a really big lesson to get out of today's webinar. So John Hatauka, he's a motivational guest speaker and magician. So the way he has used his homepage to tell people where to go next is give them from this bullet point list. Well, I call it a bullet point list. There are no bullet points, but I think you can see that he's saying, what sort of event have you got in mind? Is it an after-dinner an award ceremony? Is it a conference, a meeting, entertainment, or a school? So the person looking at his site, they know whether they're wanting someone for inspiring young people, or they know if they're arranging a conference, or they know if they're putting on an award ceremony. So instead of him spreading out his wares on a table and hoping someone will come up and buy them, he's put himself in the shoes of his different audiences and written something to tell all his different audiences where to go next in his website. Because the truth of the matter is nobody reads all your website except you. The people that land on your website are only going to read the bits that are relevant to them. So that's the third objective, tell them where to go next with calls to action and make them strong and clear and visual from the point of view of your customer. And the fourth objective, as you can see, is filtering out unwanted clients. So before you look at the next slide, I have to give you an apology for the bad language on it. This is a website from a web designer, and I'm going to stop talking for a second just so that you can read it. Now, this web designer has a very particular sense of humour, as I think you can see. That sense of humour is not going to appeal to everybody. So what it does, it filters out people that don't get him. It only attracts people that are on the same wavelength, and it's a very brave thing to do from his point of view. But for him it works, because it means he's only working with people that like his style. So it saves anybody wasting their time. So that's one way of filtering out unwanted clients. The other example that I wanted to show you on this section has won awards for the website. She's won awards for having the world's worst website, and she's won awards for having one of the world's best. So have a look at that. If you haven't seen it before, this is Ling, who does car leasing, and she pitched to Dragon's Den some years ago, and they offered her investment and she turned it down. Now you can see from this, it's a bonkers website. The live version has a chicken that walks across it. It has karaoke singing that plays. It's got things that flash and scroll around. And you might take one look at it and think, oh no, that's not for me, it makes my eyes bleed. Or you might think, this is entertaining, this is a bit of fun, and you can click around and enjoy it at the same time as getting a really good cheap quote for leasing your next car. And I can tell you that this is utterly consistent when we talk about branding with all the experience of going through the quote process and taking out a car. Because I applied once for a lease car quote from her, and she offered me a free gift. She said, did I want some free money? And along came a Chinese note to the value of 0.002 pence or something, plus a mint that was wrapped, and she said her sister had gone to the bank to get this little note to send to me and picked up this mint off the counter of the bank in China. So the whole experience of dealing with her, the functionality works really well, but the sense of humour that she displays, and that she displays consistently across everything she does, filters out people that are not going to find it fun. So I'm not recommending that everybody does it this way, but what I am recommending is that you use your own personality and express it through your website in such a way that it only attracts the people that are on your wavelength. And dealing with an on-screen interaction can be a very impersonal thing, and a lot of websites end up bland and boring because people think it needs to sound corporate, it needs to sound like everybody else. What I'm saying is it needs to sound different from everybody else. It needs to sound like just you. So I hope that all makes sense so far.
Great.
Those are my 4 objectives for your homepage.
Okay, Jackie, well at this point I just want to ask anyone out there if they have any questions, maybe they could type them into the chat window, and while they're doing that, if I just maybe summarize, I think what the message that you've been giving so far with the homepage is to make sure that you really put your web visitor, you put yourself into your web visitor's shoes, you know, your target market, who you're trying to reach, are you writing for them? Getting that email address, having that subscribe box, using a very clear call to action, so that it's not just a nice read, and then making sure that the way you design your homepage appeals to your customer. And if I could just ask you at this point, you know, a common dilemma is, you know, you want to keep your homepage very clean and very visual, and how do you combine that with getting in your message? You know, and what's the trade? You know, there's a trade-off there, and have you any suggestions on that?
Yes, I was talking to Graham Jones, who's the internet psychologist. We're going to see an example of his homepage in a minute, and his advice is to have a separate website for each separate thing that you do. So if you are very clear what you sell, who to, who your competitors are, and why they should buy it from you, why your target market should buy it from you, then you set up your homepage to be very simple and clear. At a glance, people can see that's what it's about. Because his argument is Google only does one thing, and that's a search. Amazon only does one thing, and that's sell product. Or Wikipedia only does one thing, that's give information. So the websites that we all visit most often only do one thing. So his advice to small businesses is the same, that your website should only try and do one thing. That way you can keep it simple.
Okay, great. A couple of questions then that have come in. What does WIIFM stand for?
Great question. I'm sorry it didn't come clear when I was on that slide. It stands for What's in it for me? That is what is in the mind of your audience when they're looking at your website. So, for example, if you sell a cure for bad backs and the person looking at the website hasn't got a bad back, doesn't know anyone with a bad back, doesn't expect to know anyone with a bad back, they're not going to read your website, no matter if you sell the best bad back cure in the entire world. So people are always thinking, what's in it for me, when they look at your marketing material online and offline, and you therefore have to be relevant to them.
Okay, another question. Pop-ups usually put me off websites. Is there any way around this while still getting clients to give me their email addresses?
That's a great question. The two examples I showed aren't actually pop-ups, although it looked that way in the slides just because I wanted to zoom in on that bit of the homepage so that people could see clearly what I was talking about. The research shows that pop-ups attract more sign-ups than sites without a pop-up. And the technology for pop-ups is much more sophisticated today than it was 5 years ago. So you can control that the pop-up only appears when someone's been on the site for a certain amount of time, or where they've scrolled down and read a certain paragraph, or that they don't see it if they revisit the site within a certain period of time, and so on. Personally, I don't like them either. So I don't use them for me, but all I can tell you is the research shows they do capture more sign-ups than not.
Okay, it's interesting. And another one here, is there a minimum or maximum number of pages you would recommend on a website?
Well, that's really hard to say. I think your simplest website can be one page. It could be one very long page or even one short page. And a simple business website probably has a home page and maybe 4 or 5 sub-pages. So the sub-pages might be about us. There might be Why Us, which I think is a really good page to have as standard, and not very many people do, but that is what is in the mind of the audience. They're looking around, they're shopping around to buy a product or a service, they land on your website. What they're thinking is, why should I choose this supplier? So having a Why Us page answers that question up front. FAQs can be a very useful page to have, frequently asked questions, and that way it can shortcut time saving. If somebody normally would phone you up and ask, well, what's it cost, or how do I order? If all that's on the website, then when someone asks it, you can say, oh, here's a link that answers all your questions. And that kind of page can be all full of keywords, which helps it get found on search. Contact Us, I think, should be a page. And that gives your postal address, your mobile, your landline, any other ways of contacting you. But I also think your phone number and or email address ought to be in the top right-hand corner of every page. Because even though you have a separate contact link, that is one click and one opportunity to lose people. If your phone number is in the top right-hand corner of every page of your site, people don't even have to make that one click. And your objective ultimately is for people to get in touch so that you can then sell them whatever it is that you provide. So then you'd have another page for your products and services. So I think a minimum number of pages would be anything between 1 and 5. A maximum number of pages is as many as you like. And on my site, I've had lots of feedback because there's all sorts of free stuff and there's lots of resources and things people can do, as well as videos and information about me and ways I can help. So a lot of people find that the amount of content gives a lot of credibility to my service. So the amount of content absolutely depends on what you sell. There are e-commerce sites that have hundreds of pages, of course, because I'll have a page for every item. So I'm sorry I can't be more specific. The actual answer is it depends.
But there's some great ideas there for pages. Anyway, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, well, we'll move on then, I think, Jackie. That's okay?
Okay. Well, the next thing I said is 4 words to avoid 4 words never to use on your website. And when I was writing my book, which is The Little Fish Guide to Writing Your Own Website, I did some research to say how many people used these 4 words. And at the time it was more than 2 million people. That was almost exactly a year ago. So almost 2 million people used this phrase, which I say never use. And when I researched it again this year, it's down to 1.5 million. So why I would love to say that my little book made all the difference, I doubt I can be personally held responsible for this reduction in the number of people using these words. So welcome to my website. Those are the words which I say never use, and which millions of people still do. And the reason I say that is because they don't add any value. First of all, they sound really dated because it's what people used to say years ago. And second of all, it doesn't meet search engine requirements, and it doesn't meet requirements for human site visitors. Now for search engines, one of the things they look at, one of many things that they look at, is your main heading on the page. In the code it's tagged with H1. So you know if you use Word for typing documents, and you can use Word style sheets, you can rank your headings, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and that shows the importance of the relative headings. In the code for a website it's exactly the same. Your main heading is H1 and subsequent headings can be H2, H3 and so on. So your H1 heading tells Google and other search engines these are important words. So where it's looking for keywords, if you have keywords in your H1 heading, then Google thinks, aha, this page is about whatever that keyword is. So welcome to my website doesn't help you with search engines if that's what you want, but it also fails the what's in it for me test with them, as we were asked earlier on. So the customer, if they're looking at your website and they've only got 3 seconds to decide whether or not it's the right place for them to be, at a glance the heading is the main thing they're going to look at. So that heading needs to answer what's in it for me if you want it to appeal to human site visitors. So it's important to be more creative than just saying, welcome to my website.
We're giving you 2 options and you've got to see which one you would pick if you were building a website all about plumbing. And I'm going to give you the 2 options. One is the home of good plumbing, and the second one is need a good plumber, question mark. Okay, well, I'm getting in all the answers here, and the majority is needs a good plumber. That's what's coming up. Is that the right one, Jackie?
That is the right one.
Okay.
And the reason is this. There is top-down language and bottom-up language. And since social media hit the mainstream about 5.5 years ago, the power has shifted to the audience and not to the company who owns the website. So top-down language would be the home of good plumbing. That's talking about the company. It's not talking from the point of view of the audience. Bottom-up language would be need a good plumber, and it would go on to say then you've come to the right place because, and you'd give all the rationale for why choose that particular plumber. So that's anyone that voted for the home of good plumbing. I hope I've explained why that wouldn't be the best choice, but need a good plumber with a question would possibly be a better choice for a heading.
And I suppose as well their questions are very good on headlines, aren't they, because they tend to draw in people.
Questions are one very good way of, one technique of writing headings, yes. And of course there are a whole bunch of other things which there's probably not time to go into today. But I could do a follow-up. I've got a document, 10 ways of writing headlines, which I can give you, Anne, for anybody that wants to get some more ideas.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I actually tried that with my own website because, you know, the way you normally put a keyword into your headlines on each page, I tried to twist a lot of them into headlines. I really did think it helped the length of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, people stayed on my website longer when I did that.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Okay, so do we move on now? The 4 elements you need on your website, or do you want to take some more questions before we move on? I can see some questions.
No, I think that's fine. Yeah, I think they're all looking to get your document on the headings, saying yes, please. So
okay.
we'll definitely get
well,
that.
We've got some more freebies for at the end as well, but I'll add in that headlines one as a bonus.
Okay.
So the 4 elements you do need on your website. If those are the told you the 4 words not to use, so 4 elements that you do need these days. So the first one, and this is for pleasing Google. It's also for pleasing humans. It's called freshness.
Okay.
So Google's looking for 4 main things, and of course it is more complicated than that, but good clean code in the first place, which is down to your web developer or the platform you choose. Keywords, I mentioned keywords briefly. Those are less and less important, but inbound links are critical, because every link to your website is like a vote for your website, but not all inbound links are the same. An inbound link from another highly ranked relevant website is worth more than 100 links from random directories. And in fact, random links might actually downgrade you these days. So the way to get inbound links, one thing is from activity on social media, where people are sharing your valuable content with each other. And it all comes down to having good content that's shareable in the first place, because no one's going to link to your homepage just because you've got a lovely homepage, but they might link to a useful blog post or article where you've written hints, tips and how-tos that help them. So all those inbound links help. And the 4th thing is freshness. So Google looks at a website to see when was this last updated. And if it hasn't been updated for 2 or 3 years, that's like ancient history in web world, and your competitor sites could very well leapfrog you in the search engine results. So keeping your content up to date tells Google, yes, this site is active, this site is alive, and it's one of many ways that can help boost your ranking. So how do you keep your content fresh? And on the next slide we see Graham Jones, who I mentioned earlier, the internet psychologist. What he does is his whole home page is his blog. And so instead of having he often has a generic box at the top that is promoting his current book or something, but why this helps is that new site visitors land on his site and they can see, oh yes, this site is up to date. And existing site visitors, people who already know him, land on his website and see, and they repeatedly land on his website because he's giving good added value. So here's another of my little catchphrases. You want to add value, not be an advert. Because no one goes to the internet looking for an advert. They don't look to be sold to. For e-commerce, they know what product they want and they'll shop around for that product. But for people that sell services and so on, and advice, yes, here we are.
And can I ask you, Jackie, does he put the whole blog post on his homepage or just a snippet?
The whole post.
Okay, interesting.
Then because people search for 2 things, I've just got another bit of facts for you. 90% of people go to the internet to search for something, and what they're searching for is either information or entertainment. They're generally not searching for an advert unless it's an advert that is funny and they want to send it to their friends. So that's entertainment. So that's what you need to provide. They're not actually searching for background information about you and your products and services. They're searching for information or entertainment. So we've got Sean Smith's homepage here with a pull-out that shows he also incorporates his blog inside his homepage, but this is just his headlines. So you can see it's constantly being refreshed, and in his case it's got the words customer experience repeated in each of those headlines. So I would guess, and you can also see in the background of the page, the words customer experience are repeated. I'm guessing that that's what he wants to be found for on search. So he's doing fresh blog posts all the time, all repeating his keywords, and
so
embedded with his homepage, so his homepage looks fresh.
So he's got about 3 blog posts there on his homepage at any one time, rather than just the one.
The latest 3, yes.
The latest 3. That's another way of handling that content.
And that's the way I do it too. I've got 5 blog headlines on my homepage.
And would you have any other content on your homepage?
Oh yes, there's other things as well on mine, as well as on the other examples we're going to look at. As I said at the beginning of the call, there's different ways of doing the same thing. Now this is Andy Lopata's freshness. The way he uses freshness is to embed specific tweets. Now you can embed your whole Twitter feed, and I've done that, but what he's done is selectively choose favourable tweets that he wants to keep that are testimonials, and he has embedded them, called the Twitter Buzz, on his homepage. So again, it's giving him the advantage of freshness, but it's also giving people that look at his homepage the advantage of seeing, oh, look at these other people are saying nice things about him. And because they're tweets, they can click through to the original, and it shows that they're genuine, and it all gives him more credibility. So whether you embed your whole Twitter feed or just selected tweets, that's another way of adding freshness to your homepage. And while we're on the subject of social media, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say there that, you know, I have my Twitter feed in the footer, which is another place to put it.
Yes, it is. And that's where mine is too. And so here on the homepage, Steve Clark has his Facebook feed. So he not only has his updates, but he also has the number of likes he's got with a Facebook plugin on his homepage. So integrating your social media, whether it's blogging, Twitter, Facebook, with your website is a good, sensible thing to do. And why that is also sensible is because, to backtrack a little bit, when they've landed on your homepage, remember I said you want to capture their email address if you can. Even if you can't do that, you want to capture them to be friends, fans or followers on your social media, because you want them to keep in touch so that when they are ready to buy, you're the one they think of. So here's the element number 2 that you need to include on your website. Freshness is 1. Element 2 is shortcuts. I stressed earlier we're all really busy people. So what you want to do is provide shortcuts to decision making. And reviews is a really important one. We all know that if you buy a product from Amazon, you read the reviews. If you book a hotel, you go to TripAdvisor and read the reviews. So here's a training company that are ranked 4.9 out of 5 stars. If you are looking for their particular type of training and you're looking at other training companies, chances are you'll choose the one that's ranked 4.9 out of 5 because you think, okay, they must be pretty good. And the star ratings, particularly Google star ratings, show in search results. And so if you're looking at a page of results and one of them has got 5 stars, golden and shining, and all the other listings don't, chances are it's a shortcut to people think, oh, they must be all right. Another shortcut, and I think this slide needs several clicks because it's Sean Weaver, and what he has is a flash slideshow of his client logos.
And while that's coming up, Jackie, can I just ask how people get those 5 stars? Do they have to have reviews on their Google Plus page or something like that?
Not Google Plus so much, but if you are a destination that has an actual address, a physical address, you can pin yourself on Google Places, and that allows you to collect reviews. So you would then just contact your loyal customers and say, please would you write something nice about me, and it doesn't cost you anything to get these reviews.
Okay.
But you do need to be good at what you do, otherwise no one will review you and say nice things. So that's always step 1 in marketing. Right, we're looking at Sean Weaver's site now, and you'll see coming up in a row some of the clients he works with. So you can see he works with BT, and he works with Microsoft, and he works with HSBC, and he works with clients of that type. So this is like a slideshow on his homepage, and at a glance other clients looking at this, or prospective clients, think, okay, well, if he's good enough for BT and Microsoft and HSBC, chances are he's good enough for me. So having your client list, your client logos used with permission, is another shortcut to people deciding whether or not you are right for them. A couple more examples in this section about shortcuts. The next one is Barnaby now. So Barnaby has used testimonials on his homepage, so these are in the words of somebody else saying how he helped them. And my advice for testimonials is, if you collect them from day one of trading and use them everywhere, on your website, on your print marketing and anywhere else. And ideally, don't just have testimonials that say, thanks, you were great, because that gives you a lovely fluffy feeling, but it doesn't actually tell prospective clients or customers what you do. So what you want is the storytelling format for testimonials that starts with the problem, then has the solution, then has the results, because what people buy is results. So you start with what the situation was before you got involved, then that's the problem. Then you say the solution, what you actually did, and then you say the results, what changed as a result of your intervention. So that can be just in a couple of sentences, but problem, solution, results is the great format for testimonials. And what Graham Codrington did, he has case studies, so that's even in more detail on his homepage. Links through to case studies that tells the whole story in the format problem, solution, results, with a few words from the customers themselves. And again, it's a shortcut to decision making. It's a shortcut to someone deciding, oh well, if he did that for so-and-so, or if so-and-so says that, he must be all right.
At this point, maybe we could get some questions, I think, Jackie. Well, that's the next point, I think.
We've got...
Anyone, any questions so far on this whole section about the elements you need on your website? And I think Jackie's covered keeping your content fresh and providing shortcuts to decision making, like good reviews. That's where we've got so far, and there you have Graham Codrington's list of case studies. So if you have any questions, just type them into the chat window there. I do love the idea of getting reviews on Google Places. I hadn't actually come across that one before. So there's always new things to learn. Now, a question that's come in here: are good reviews on your social media sites of any real use?
Yes, they are, because social media sites are just people having conversations, and if people say nice things about you in that public social media world, why would you not share that with your audience in the other places where they're having conversations? So yes, I think what other people say about you is more convincing than anything you say yourself. And just because it's on social media doesn't make any difference. Doesn't make a difference whether it's an email or a posted letter or a social media update. If people are saying nice things about you, that helps sell you.
And would you recommend putting a lot of testimonials on people's sales pages in particular?
I'd put testimonials everywhere. Everywhere you've got them. And I understand people are cynical about testimonials because they think, well, you're only going to share the good ones. But if you sell products, you need reviews. If you sell services, you need testimonials. And if you sell yourself as an expert in something, you need recommendations. And ideally, video ones are the best of all. But written ones on social media, because someone can click and contact the person who wrote it, they're very genuine. They seem very credible, and they add to your credibility.
Okay, just one last question before we move on to the next point there. Can you please repeat the difference between top-down language and bottom-up language?
Top-down language is the point of view of the company, and bottom-up language is the point of view of the audience.
Okay, well, I think that's...
I hope that answers
I hope that answers the question. Okay, Jackie, so if you'd like to keep going.
Element number 3, take away the risk. People have got money in their pocket and they don't want to give it to you unless you can absolutely convince them that you are the right person for them to spend their money with. So people that are holding budgets might have to convince their boss why they are recommending you as the provider. So anything you can do to make that job easy for them is a good thing. So here's an example, and it's Leslie Everett. She's a a fellow of the Professional Speakers Association and a member of, or I think she actually president of the Global Speakers Federation. So if you're looking for a speaker, having those logos reassures you that she is serious about that as her trade, her craft, and her profession. So no matter what you do, what you sell, having trade and professional logos of associations you belong to, awards that you've won, all those add weight to the seriousness, the perceived seriousness of you as the business owner. So if you as a customer are choosing between two builders and one builder's website has Guild of Master Craftsmen and the other one doesn't, chances are you'll go with the one that does belong to the association. So given that that's the trend, why would you not use that for yourself? So if you've got any logos that you are legally allowed to use because you're a member of these associations, then do so. So that's one way to take away the risk. Next way to take away the risk is to offer a satisfaction guarantee. Because if you, many of us, when we sell something, in the rare occasion that you get a complaint, chances are we'll give a full refund because that's good business practice. So the next slide shows a graphic of a typical guarantee, and for a training company, and a lot of training companies do that, say, well, if you've done this course and you're not happy, then you can claim on the guarantee. Now the reality is people don't often claim on guarantees, and the reality also is that when I did this research for this presentation, I didn't find very many speakers that were doing it. I did find this one, American humorist called David Herer. So he does a guarantee, and you can see on the next slide he buries it in the body copy, and so it's very hard to see. Even when you click again, Anne, and it highlights in yellow. So my advice would be, if you're going to do a guarantee, make it strong and bold and visual, so at a glance people can see, okay, there's no risk here because if it all goes horribly wrong, I get my money back. And the next one is free tasters. It doesn't matter what you sell, but people want to have a free trial. Try before you buy. So whether you send tiny samples or whether you do free tasters in the form of videos or advice on your blog, people get a feeling, a flavour for what you offer, and then they can trust, because the risk has gone, yes, I've had this little taster, this is what I want after all, yes, I'll hand over my money. And the fourth thing, and this is a really important trend in websites, is video. And why this is important is because we benchmark our experience of an on-screen interaction against TV and cinema. So even when you're looking at a website, video and the moving image is what we expect to see. So video links are clicked 30% more on Facebook than any other type of link. Video links in newsletters or tip sheets are clicked more than text and image links. So if you're not using video on your website, you're missing a trick. Here's an example of Jeff Ram, marketing speaker's website homepage. This is pretty much all video, which for a speaker is obviously a really important thing. So the rise of video on websites is, if you're going to do one thing as a result of this webinar, then adding video is the one thing to do. And it's getting easier all the time now, isn't it, I think? You know, with iPhones and so on. Yeah. Yes, you can. Doesn't have to be BBC quality. You can make your own videos, and it doesn't have to cost much, if anything at all. Okay. Great. Well, I think that's the 4 points then covered in that last section. And again, just to refresh, number 1 was keep your content fresh. Number 2 was provide shortcuts to decision making. Number 3, take away the risk. And then number 4, use video. And maybe you'd just like to maybe tell us a little bit about now, you know, your own business. Yes, I've got a few resources for people to say thank you for listening for so far. And if you go to jackiebarrie.com and click the freebies link, you can download a document that is called Homepage Checklist, and that covers everything that we've talked about in this call. So it covers what to do and why and how to do it. So the 4x4x4 approach, which we've done on this call, 4 objectives, 4 words to avoid, and 4 elements you need. And there's some other things you can do on jackiebarrie.com. Sign up for my tip sheet and you'll get monthly emails with copywriting and marketing advice. And you currently can get £100 off a review of your website. So I'll write a report saying what's good, bad and ugly about it. If you want more information, there's the book I mentioned earlier, The Little Fish Guide to Writing Your Own Website. That's available on Amazon. It's £9.99 for a print copy, that's in pounds, and it's £3 for a Kindle copy. And finally, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's @JackieBarrie. You can see the spelling there on the book cover, and it would be lovely to keep in touch that way. I'm happy to answer any other questions going forward.
Okay, well, I just want to say a big thank you for that, Jackie. I think you made loads of really good action points. They were crystal clear, very much to the point, lots of great detail, which I think is important, you know, the little how-tos. That's so important. So I really appreciate you taking the time out this evening. And so thanks to you all for attending tonight. Thanks again to Jackie, a wonderful webinar. I really appreciate your time.